Regular meeting of the Lawrence Board of Education. The first item, we need to approve an agenda.
Move we approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we don't have any recognitions this evening, so I will move right into the President's report. I just have a couple things tonight. All board members had the privilege of congratulating our Free State and Lawrence High graduating classes of 2018 last Tuesday and Wednesday. Graduation is always a highlight of the year for me as a board member, and I want to say congratulations again to all of our graduates and to our students and staff who received special awards at the graduation ceremonies. The policy committee met today and had an additional discussion about the fundraising policy that's on tonight's consent agenda, as well as continuing discussions that we've been having about our donations and gifts policies. We also discussed some recent issues that have come to the fore regarding cell phone use and policies, particularly at the middle school level, as well as our acceptable use policies and discipline issues related to district-issued devices. So those are some things that we will be, we don't have a particular draft that we're working on, but we're talking about some policy issues related to them, and we'll be looking at our existing policies. And finally, I wanted to address two recent City of Lawrence planning issues that have come to the board's attention. First, the proposed widening and expansion of 19th Street from O'Connell Road eastward, which we had a board public commentary about recently, and also the recent recommendation from the city's Transportation Commission to create a bicycle boulevard extending from Iowa to Massachusetts. Both of these proposed projects could potentially significantly impact Lawrence Public Schools buildings. With respect to the proposed 19th Street project, there are some serious concerns about the impacts of that project on Corley Elementary School in particular. Within the past few years, we've completed an over $9 million renovation of that building, which included reorienting the front entrance to 19th Street and removing the unsightly chain link fence that had closed off the school from the street. Notably, any increase in traffic on 19th Street or a widening of the street at that location would have a potential substantial impact, particularly safety implications for that school, not to mention the negative impact it would have on the building given our investment in moving the front entrance to the historic 19th Street side of the property. Both that project and the proposed bicycle boulevard along 21st Street have the potential to significantly impact traffic around and access to Lawrence High School. As we embark on a $50 million reinvestment in Lawrence High, of particular concern would be any plans to widen 19th Street at that location or to change or limit access to the school from the 21st Street side as a result of the Bicycle Boulevard project. I'm sharing these comments with the board with the following in mind. I strongly encourage you to reach out to the city commissioners with your input on those two projects and to do that soon. Also, Dr. Stubblefield will be following up with the city manager, Mr. Marcus, to further discuss how the district will provide input on these issues. And with that, that is all I have tonight. So we'll move on to the report of the superintendent.
Good evening. I just have I have several things tonight. First, the Kansas school funding litigation has been ongoing for years. In the most recent case, it is possible that the Kansas Supreme Court can issue an order to close schools if it rules that the legislators have failed to provide a finance system that meets the constitutional requirements of adequacy and equity. The school district is making plans should we have to comply with such an order. In terms of teacher compensation, we have worked with LEA to communicate to teachers, and teachers will be paid their entire contract, even if we have to close down. We will continue to keep all employees informed as we learn more. Negotiation sessions are planned for June 4th and June 18th at 5:00 p.m. Turf replacement on the high school outdoor athletic fields begins today. Free State High Stadium will be closed to the general public this summer. Lawrence High will remain open until June 30th. Patrons are welcome to exercise on the middle school tracks. Bond construction at South and Southwest middle schools also begins this summer. The goals of the two projects are to provide flexible spaces to enhance student educational experiences. Congratulations to Executive Director Kevin Harrell and our special education team. The Kansas Department of Education has assigned the district the highest meets requirements level of determination through the IDA State Performance Plan Report. The district earned this status level by meeting substantial compliance in all 14 state performance plan district level indicators, including the submission of timely and accurate data. This represents excellent work on the part of our special education staff. Congratulations to the South Middle School mental health team for receiving the district's Rick Dole Teamwork Award, along with $1,000 from lead partner Truity Credit Union. At the 2018 Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network Respect Awards in New York City, Lawrence High School's Total Equity Alliance Club was selected as a finalist for Gender Sexuality Alliance of the Year and was mentioned in the program as honor roll members. This event showcases the work of those who have made a significant impact on the lives of LGBTQ+ youth. I appreciate and congratulate Lawrence High Total Equity Alliance for its efforts. We celebrated the retirement of 65 employees this month. I want to thank them for their combined 1,450 years of service and wish them well in the future. We have one final graduation ceremony left this school year. The Adult Learning Center and Diploma Completion Program will host its graduation at 7 p.m. on June 7th in the Lawrence High Auditorium. The board and the public is invited to attend. Congratulations again to all of our 2018 graduates and their families. I want to remind the public that we partner with our community organizations to provide free breakfast and lunch for children ages 1 through 18 this summer in a variety of locations beginning June 4th. You may find those details on our website. Also, K-12 summer bus passes are $10 and may be purchased at grocery stores, recreation centers, and City Hall. Community nonprofit agencies will begin accepting applications for free school supplies, shoes, and backpacks for families who qualify on June 25th at EC-CAN and July 9th at the Salvation Army. These details also may be found on our website. And this is a reminder for parents who are interested in serving on the high school start time advisory committee. May 31st is the last day to submit applications. So if you're interested, I encourage you to apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Okay, we'll move on to patron commentary. Do we have any this evening? Okay, no patron commentary, so we will move on to board commentary. All right, great. Then we can head on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. That item or items removed are voted on separately. And we have a couple of, 3 retirements to recognize this evening.
We have 3 retirements. Margaret Bowman for 29 years of service as a teacher. Beverly Hyde, who from Cordley, who was with us for 42 years. And Charlene Jimboy for 10 years of service. So thank you for your service to our district. And with that, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay.
Kimball?
Yes.
Beeson?
Yes.
Fincher?
Yes.
Gordon Ross?
Yes.
Ingram?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have 2 reports on our agenda tonight. Our first is a mental health report with Jose Cornejo, our mental health facilitator, and Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education. Our board has done a great job of supporting our mental health services in our district for the last few years. A few years ago, one of the best things we've done was we hired Jose Cornejo as the mental health facilitator. And I can tell you that I work with the districts in the Kansas City area, so our region, and they are all envious that we actually believe in mental health and we have someone that actually at a district level can address it. So I do want to appreciate that. Today, Jose is going to talk about, just going to update you on our mental health services in our district, what's happened, and additions and what's going on. And then we'll answer questions if you have it.
Well, thank you. I'm Jose Cornejo, the mental health facilitator for the district. Finished in my 4th year and looking forward to my 5th year. So I just want to share with you that the things that we work on from the mental health perspective come from the district goal to enhancing program for our social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. And from the mental health perspective, we want to continue to explore the needs of our district mental health services. And so using that goal to help me work with our teams in our buildings and look at what our building needs are, and then look at collectively what we need as a district to help our staff address some of the needs of those buildings are the things that I work closely with Kevin on to look at how do we support those professional development needs, but also the supports that are required in each building. These are some of the benefits of our mental health services in our schools. One of the big things is it allows our teams to work collaboratively with members at that building, along with the teachers, to look at what are some of the behaviors that are driving the needs at a particular building. And so when we talk about mental health, we really are talking about the social emotional needs of our students. When we talk about mental health in terms of a mental illness, we oftentimes will refer those students and families to our community partners, whether that be Bird Nash or other agencies in our community that work with families on addressing the mental health needs of their particular student or child. The other thing is our teams have the opportunity to meet pretty regularly so that they can keep a pulse on how they're addressing the needs, but also whether or not those interventions are actually working. And so we're talking about Tier 2 interventions if we're putting kids in groups, or if we're talking Tier 3 interventions where counselors or social workers or school psychologists or our RAP specialists are working with kids one-on-one. So that's how we work effectively together in our buildings, and if we need to bring in additional resources, we address that on an as-need basis. So these are our building providers. I already talked a little bit about that. We do have RAP specialists in both high schools. Both high schools have 2 RAP specialists. Our middle schools have a RAP specialist. And then our grade schools, there are 3 RAP specialists that work between 6 schools. So there's a RAP specialist at Prairie Park in Kennedy, and a RAP specialist at Pinckney and Woodlawn, and then New York and Sunflower. And so they divide the week up, and they collaborate with the principal to determine what days they're going to be at that particular building, and they keep a pretty consistent schedule throughout the school year. So everything we do from the mental health side of things in our school district, we tie it to our CI3T model, because we want to make sure that we're looking at the social behavioral needs, but also how are those behavioral and social needs impacting the student's academics. And so what interventions do we need to put in place to help that student be successful academically? And then what other services might need we put in place to help our teachers address some of the needs of the students? So oftentimes we'll do presentations during after-school PD in our buildings to raise awareness on how to work with students who are experiencing anxiety, or how to work with students who are experiencing some type of mental illness, so that teachers have a better understanding of the type of supports and engagement that they can use with those students, so that we're not looking at the kid as being oppositional or defiant because their social emotional needs aren't being met at the classroom level. So these are the things we do at the primary tier level, things that we do in the classroom district-wide. Every grade level has a social skill curriculum. At the elementary level, we use positive action. At the secondary level, 6 through 12, we use Connect with Kids. And that's a video-based curriculum where the teachers or whoever's facilitating the social skill lesson, they watch a 3 to 4 minute video, and then there's a lesson discussion guide that goes with that video. Each school, working with Dr. Besselo, they have identified an outline of the topics that they're going to cover throughout the school year, and then the administrators work with their staff to determine what class period they're going to work on or use that particular social skill lesson. At the middle schools, oftentimes they use their advisory times to work on their social skills. At the grade school levels, it kind of varies according to their classroom schedule. We do believe going into next year where they have the early morning period set aside where they can work on social emotional learning opportunities during that first 25-minute period before school starts. Tier 2, you would see in our schools across the district, our counselors and social workers and school psychologists are facilitating a variety of social skill groups throughout the district. Those are referral-based, and so if students are having challenges making friends, they will facilitate a social skill group to help those kids build those skill sets on how to have positive interactions with their peers. If they're having challenges with getting along with others or some conflict resolution issue, the facilitator group based on that, and that's all building decided. And then our counselors lean into the positive action curriculum to make sure that the students are hearing some of the same language throughout the building. And everything in the Tier 2 level is referral based, and so the counselors will use this screening data oftentimes from the that they do 3 times a year. And so they'll coordinate groups to address the internalizing needs of our students, but also facilitate groups to address the externalizing issues that our kids may be exhibiting at the schools.
Do you want me to wait? Can I ask questions now?
Can you wait?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm going to come back, Jose. I'll have a list.
All right,
Yeah.
not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then Tier 3, these are individualized interventions, and oftentimes these are interventions that we may seek community supports for our students. They may need additional supports that we may not necessarily be able to provide one-on-one counseling with these kids. And so with our RAP specialists in our buildings, oftentimes we can use them to help us, help families navigate getting into the Burton Ash Community Mental Health Center or other agencies in our community. And this is just a list of the agencies that we continue to collaborate with in our community. Burton Ash has been a great partner in addressing the needs of our students, along with KU Child and Family Clinic when it comes to the mental health or the mental illness needs of our students. But we continue to work closely with DCF to figure out how to support families or children that might be in transition or families that need additional supports, along with Call Valley. And then we work with the hospitals in the area if students are coming out of the hospital to provide those ongoing supports and needs so that that transition back into school is as safe and as smooth as possible for that student. So when we look at professional development, these are some of the opportunities that we've provided our mental health professionals in our district. And we continue to explore ways in which we can support our staff. And we get feedback from our social workers and our counselors to look at professionally what are some skill sets that we need to work on that we see in our buildings that will help our students and our staff. And so oftentimes during our district-wide PD, there's often a track of in-services that our staff can participate in along with all the other opportunities academically that's offered district-wide. And one of the big ones that we implemented this school year was the trauma-informed care modules. And so buildings across the district have begun diving into those modules. There are 7 modules total. And so it kind of varies across the district, but we encourage schools to at least complete module 1 and 2 at the end of this school year. And then buildings will continue to work on those modules so that eventually hopefully by August of 2019, we can start developing a plan on how we become a trauma responsive school district so that we're addressing the needs of those students that may be experiencing adversity in their lives. So thinking ahead, consistent mental health and social and emotional tier interventions across the district, making sure that we're doing things at the Tier 1 level so that we are teaching emotional regulation or calming strategies to all kids, giving teachers an opportunity to participate in some Tier 1 social emotional professional development as well so that they can implement some of these strategies throughout the school day. We have had multiple teachers this year participate in our anxiety awareness workshops. And in that workshop, we teach them various strategies on how to help those students that might be experiencing anxiety or stress management. And through that, it's a lot of coping skills, breathing exercises, some chair yoga, various brain breaks that they can implement throughout the school day so that the students aren't just sitting all day long, having instruction delivered to them, where they get an opportunity to do some exercises to give themselves a mental break. We have been implementing some restorative practices at Central Liberty Memorial Central Middle School, and Jeff has done a really good job of navigating that instruction with his staff. Today, I think there's at least 6 of his staff members that have gone through some training through KIPCOR out of Newton. They continue to use the restorative questions cards when they're working with students that may be having challenges within the building. And each teacher has those cards in their classroom so that they can use those questions to help navigate what's going on with that particular student. I think we need to continue working on parent education opportunities. How do we educate our parents on the mental health needs of their child, and what are things that they can do to help support their child so that they can come to school ready to learn, so that when a student comes home and shares with them maybe some of the exercises that we're teaching them in the classroom level for calming strategies, that those are the same strategies they might be able to use at the home. And then stress management and self-care, I think, is a big issue for our staff. We are experiencing a lot of staff that are at various levels of stress, and I think as a district we have a responsibility to look at ways in which we can take care of our staff so that we're not losing quality members to burnout. And so we continue to do stress management workshops throughout the school year. We have principals that invite us into their building, and we facilitate a stress management workshop during one of their PD days on Wednesdays. And so we are seeing benefits of that, but I think we need to be emphasizing more and more that buildings need to find ways in which we can do stress management workshops for their staff and explain to them what resource options do they have if they've reached that level of stress where they need additional support outside of some of the strategies that we might be teaching them from Student Services Department. So that's my last slide. Any questions?
Kelly? Yeah. Can I go? Or you guys, somebody else want to go? Okay. So I have a couple questions, but I'm wondering about the referral process and how it's operationalized. So if you have a student that is exhibiting or has either a parent has identified mental health needs, or they've reported to maybe to the guidance counselor there's mental health needs, how is that? What's the follow-through process look like for the student getting? We've identified mental health need. Here are where's the map for parents to follow and for teachers to follow when they have a kid in front of them that requires some services?
Several buildings have a mental health referral form, and we have taken that referral form this year, and I've been working with Joe Smizer on developing it so that it's electronic. And so the goal is that we're going to launch that out so that all buildings will use the same form next year. And so electronically, the teacher can fill that form out, and then it goes to the counselors or somebody on the mental health team, and then that information is taken to the next mental health team meeting and addressed. And on the form, there are some guidelines or questions that define the processes. So who is going to take ownership of this referral, and who's going to follow up with the teacher, and who's going to follow up with parents to let them know that we received your information. And there's a Likert scale on it of 1 to 5 to identify the severity of the referral. So if it's a 1, the counselor may call the student down to the office and kind of follow up with the kid to see what's going on. If it's a 5, then obviously it's an immediate urgent need, and so we're going to probably address that a little bit with more urgency. And so that's the referral process we're looking at.
Okay, so that'll be implemented next year is what you're looking at?
And the other piece to that we're also looking at is creating a tracking form so that we are collecting data on the number of referrals that we're receiving in a building throughout the school year, but not just the number of referrals, but the type of referral. So that hopefully, if we can start to identify some patterns in our building, then we can start to address maybe some of the professional development that needs to occur at that particular building.
Okay, that was actually my next question, was how you were tracking data. And I'm just wondering, when you're looking at that data, it would be nice to capture, and I'm sure you're thinking about this, students that are being turned away from services, or our services aren't being met because of either staffing issues, or they didn't quite meet the criteria for RAP, or RAP doesn't have enough workers, or whatever it might be. If there are students whose needs are not being met, if that data was being captured, that would be great.
Well, at the building level, I'm not aware of any student that's being turned away from support from one of our mental health professionals.
Okay.
I think what we find out is once we refer them to the community, either there's not follow-through, or maybe they can't afford the services that are being offered to them. And so that's oftentimes where we see where students are impacted on services being received. But at the building level...
So you think you have enough staff to meet the mental health needs of students in this district? Because that sounds like that, and I doubt it.
I don't...
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like that, and I doubt it. I mean, I doubt we have enough staff to really meet the mental health needs right now of students.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer your question.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say, no, we don't, or I could say, yes, we do, and
that
I
would
don't think either is going to be the right answer.
Okay.
I think part of the answer to the question is that, yes, it'd be nice to have more staff to need, but saying no to a student is not an option. Because even at some point, if we go to special ed referral and you go through that process, and it's pretty clear that no is not an answer. So you might have people that are overworked, or overbooked, or their caseloads are large, but they're trying to do something now. What you run into is the effectiveness, how much time and you can put into something.
Okay.
But all students receive something, whether it's enough, that becomes the question basically.
Okay.
What about the, I know you mentioned the outside organizations, like being able to collaborate, like the private therapists and things like that. And I don't know if it's changed. I think I emailed you that. I don't know if it's changed over the past, but in the past, there have been instances to where schools will not allow private therapists. Like if they were going to see your child, see the student, they couldn't see them on school property. I don't know if that's an individual school basis or...
I think as a district, we've adopted the policy that as far as in school, if we think a student needs it in school, then we provide it, because it becomes a school issue and a school identified need. And for example, in special education, we can't abdicate that responsibility to someone else. It's our responsibility, so we provide it. But we do allow students to leave. It's excused. So if a therapist wants to take a student, we allow that. A parent can have a student signed out to go places, or those different things. As far as being in school, one of the things we have to weigh is that we get so many requests of outside agencies wanting to come in school because it's a captive audience. And we so many requests that at some point we've said, no, but you can take them out, or you can use the building right after school. You can meet the student here, and we have space where you can meet students. And again, not always having a space where we can put a bunch of different people with a bunch of different students.
Other questions for Jose or for Kevin?
I guess I have kind of a question. So I've heard a couple different stories from parents of students with IEPs for social behavioral issues who have felt very vulnerable, or even just really out of sorts at those meetings. There's not, I don't think, a lot of support for the parents in those meetings, and so then they kind of walk in, aren't really sure who all is sitting around the table, maybe learn things about their kids' behavior that's the first time they're hearing about it. So I'm just kind of curious what, if anything, you have in place to maybe address that issue as it pertains to some of our families that are, feeling that way and struggling with those situations.
I have heard some of those situations, and actually my wife told me about some. She's a special ed teacher. And part of that is we're trying to address that through training for our teams, to be more sensitive to what, assuming families and people know what's happening when they walk into a meeting. So we are trying to address that through training, even some of the trauma-informed making sure our staff understands that people come in with things that you can't just jump into a situation assuming things are happening. So we are trying to address that through training. So we have heard some of that.
So there is some talk about trying to create some sort of like
Yes.
advocacy for the parent,
Yes.
I guess, in that
yeah.
case.
And-
Because even as, I mean, I had a kid with an IEP, not necessarily for those reasons, and obviously I'm kind of an outspoken sort of, I can be kind of a bulldozer, and I didn't necessarily always feel supported in those meetings either. So they are definitely stressful situations when you're a parent. So.
And a parent, and I will tell you, I felt the same way at one
Yeah.
point. So I certainly understand, and it is something that we've talked about. And sometimes some of those meetings do have social workers in it because we do have special ed social workers, but a lot of times they're not there. So
I know there was one thing that I know was mentioned about like the parent education opportunities and educating a specific individual child who may have some mental health, social, emotional things. But I think as a whole, if we're going to be a community, that we need to educate all parents in some way or form, because I think when you're educating the parent and the child, and then they go into that atmosphere, and the students and parents don't understand, I think that can bring that disconnect in that. So I don't know if we can put material out there for parents as a whole to kind of, have some basic knowledge, whether their child has.
we can work on that. We've talked about our website not having enough information overall for parents, for parents or community as far as student services. So that's something we've discussed.
I'll just say that my experience with a child that had a 504 was that when I talked about mental health needs, no one in the room was able to tell me, this year, what services were available in the district. And so I'm having a really hard time believing that we're getting this right. And I don't want it to be about, I don't want it to be my experience, but then we've gone to community meetings where we're hearing that. Right. So I'm just thinking, like, what are we missing in the translation between what's happening at the building and what parents are hearing, or how teachers are communicating what mental health services are available? I think there's still room for us to do a better job with communication about services. And I think you do really good work, but I am wondering about the translation to parents about mental health services and how we educate staff about what might be available.
And that's good feedback, and I think that, we can take that to our teams. I can't speak to what happens in meetings because I'm not there, and I can't say that that's true across the board.
Yeah, I think it's more of a policy issue, actually, is what I'm thinking about. Instead of like an individual, this is what happened in this particular meeting or in that particular meeting, is seeing that maybe there is a pattern, and so is there a policy issue in terms of like how we address either how we inform staff or how we, and it might be a communication issue, like what's available on the website, but it might also be the structure of the meeting. So that if you have a special ed teacher and they get information that there might be a mental health diagnosis, what's the next step for that kid, and how does that inform what the individual goals might be within the classroom? And some of that may be that they're already, I'm sure some teachers are brilliant at it, but I don't think it's happening across the board, and I'm thinking about how we streamline services in a way that everybody knows what's available. Right. So that it's not like you have, you're the keeper of the information, but rather it's really widely understood.
I think it is a community. We meet with, Jose meets with our mental health teams on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah.
So we know our mental health teams know this. Keeping teachers informed is a lot more difficult. One of the things we find, even with special ed, and it's a big thing, is that when people are in the middle of something, they need to know the information, and they're familiar with it. They don't deal with it for 2 or 3 months. They get into their own thing, and then they need another reminder of, we dealt with this before, or they may call with the same question they've asked before. So just trying to figure out how we can help our mental health teams keep their school teams, teachers informed, and people informed.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that I don't want us to lose in this, I've heard special ed mentioned and equated to mental health, but I think there are two lanes, and it's a population that need to access service and support that's not necessarily a part of special ed meetings or 504 meetings. So when we're looking at it, just making sure that all families know in general, here are the support systems, and articulating and leveraging our principals and mental health teams to educate our teachers, because I just didn't want that to get lost in there, because I kept hearing mental health and special ed, and they
are two different.
Yeah.
I mean, I really appreciate that comment, but then of course there is often
Right.
overlap.
No, and I think that part is definitely there. I just didn't want us to lose it and hyper focus on making sure we were having special ed teachers get information and miss some of that general population.
One of the things that we do know, and Jose was just, we were talking about the number of mental health staff we have in the district, but our social workers in our district, except at the one or two at the high school, all of our social workers are special ed.
Or special ed, yeah.
So they don't necessarily do a lot of things with general ed. Their focus has to be special ed. So sometimes they're not involved in 504 meetings or different meetings if it's not already, special ed is not already a discussion about it or an evaluation is happening.
So we don't have social workers available to work with students who don't have a 504 or an IE? Yes.
Not outside the high school.
Not outside the high school.
Okay. All of this, yeah.
Our social workers are funded through special ed. So we get reimbursement for our special ed social workers like we do our teachers. And so special education is their main focus. Now, they are on mental health teams, and they do work with students and support, but again, they work a lot with RAP, with our RAP workers, especially at the high school levels.
It does seem like the guidance counselors are often playing the role of social workers, and parent facilitators are often playing the role of social workers, like understanding what's happening at individual families and what maybe the individual needs are in terms, I mean, at least when I've visited with staff, that seems to be.
And a lot of our counselors many of our counselors are social workers, the mental health professionals, yes.
I think for me, that just highlights the importance of continuing to be partners with Burt Nash and having RAP workers in our buildings to kind of help us.
We do feel that it is a community. It's not just a school.
Right,
right. How do we support kids in and out of school?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, maybe that's a different issue, we can address it, but I think I'm still a little puzzled about that too, because a lot of the time, if we can't provide, like if the workload is large, and this is not a, IEP 504 need, but we know that these individual students have therapists and things like that, and they need to be in the environment in which they're struggling with to have that therapy. I don't understand why. I mean, I know aside from maybe 20 therapists coming in at the same time, I still don't understand why that can't be like part of a tier 2 kind of intervention with them, because we can like pull the child out of the school constantly, but are they going to really, it's like taking them out of the swimming pool and like, no, don't ever get in the swimming pool again.
I appreciate that, and I think some of the questions that we do ask is that you understand that sometimes the things that are happening in school, it's not always because of the school, and some of those issues are happening outside of school. We try to take care of in school, and they're not really addressing the issue also. Sure. But we do have discussions about that, and recently we had an OCR complaint about counselors in school, and our policy actually protected us because we, it was one of the things that this is how we practice. We're not, and it's hard to decide who can and who can't come in, and at some point, it goes back to that, how many people do you allow in the school, and do we have room for people to come in school, because it's not just therapists, it's also, you have, we have lots of different agencies that know where the kids are, and the kids are at school.
So in connecting mental health to the interventionists that we just agreed to hire, and then thinking about that in terms of like restorative practices. So we have these these layers of mental health services where, when you talk about those tier 2 behaviors, how do you see if ownership for discipline, for example, is in the hands of outside of the hands of mental health, how are they interacting together? Does that make sense? So like when we, if we have a kid that gets in school or out of school suspension, and we suspect that maybe there's a social emotional need there and that's perhaps what the behavior is, how do we bring mental health in? So I know, for example, if a student has brought drugs to school and they interact with the SRO, but maybe there's mental health stuff going on there as well. When they come back into the school, how do you tag team essentially between these moving parts that are actually all connected?
I think there's going to have to be collaboration between that interventionist and the existing mental health team in that building. The bigger question is, what is the function of that behavior? And
Right.
so how do we address that?
Yeah.
And that's where the mental health team and interventionists could work together collaboratively to figure out what's driving that behavior. You know, why do I need to smoke weed to be able to get through school? You know, may not have anything to do with school.
Right.
You know, and so we also have to have families that are willing to provide also the support and services for their child, because we can address the needs of the student at school, but we're still going to send them back home or back into the community, right?
So are you always, in those cases, is the mental health team always consulted if there is a discipline, a particular behavior that is either that tier 2 or tier 3 behavior? Are you always, as a matter of practice, are you always contacted?
From my experience, most of the mental health teams they're informed, they have a pulse on what's going on in the
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. That was very informative. Appreciate it. Okay, our second report this evening is Communications Planning with Julie Boyle, our Executive Director of Communications, and Rachel Asbury, our Communications Specialist.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
I am Julie Boyle, Executive Director of Communications. We've got something going on up there.
And I am Rachel Asbury, the Communications Specialist.
And everything that, every report that comes to the board relates to a board goal, and this is no exception. So there's the board goal on our screen that precipitated this report. We wanted to talk about our areas of responsibility first, just in case there are patrons that think we sit around and wait for it to snow. We do a lot of other things too. Of course, our greatest responsibility is staff at school and media relations, which I view, my personal philosophy is personal relationships. Build positive staff, school, and media relations. Notice on the headline I put team in all caps because we are now a team, which is wonderful, and I want to thank Dr. Stubblefield and the school board for valuing the role of communication and community engagement and adding a communications specialist this year. Rachel, obviously. The district recognition program, in case you don't know, we have 8 staff awards. We also do a school volunteer reception during American Education Week. And we have 2 citizen awards, a public service to education and a Outstanding Citizen of the Year award. And our team organizes all of those awards. In terms of special events, we have lots of those too, convocation or fall kickoff. We have 3 all-staff appreciation mixers spread throughout the school year. We also have 3 staff appreciation events here at the district office for our staff. Correspond issues, surveys, public meetings, any of those would be considered special events as well. Our partnership with the KU Spencer Research Library is because district archives are housed in their Kansas collection, and you would be surprised at the number of requests we get for, you know, my Aunt Sally attended such and such school in 1920, and can you find? And we tend to direct them to the Spencer Research Library and Watkins Community Museum for better research on those types of requests. Also, part of our job description says that we should be a part of professional organizations and groups to help build those relationships in the community. On the left side is some of the internal teams that I'm a part of, and then on the right side is our community, state, and national organizations that Rachel and I both belong to. The Douglas County PIO group, I've been a member probably since its inception, and about 20 years ago. And its primary focus is to discuss communication planning in terms of an emergency that would involve multiple jurisdictions. So it has representation from police, fire, medical, university, KU public safety. Bert Nash has participated, Red Cross has participated, the health department. Let me see if I'm leaving anybody out. The City of Lawrence, Douglas County Emergency Management. So we get together monthly and talk about those things, and we also have exercises generally twice a year, and the last one was a hazardous materials emergency, and we actually did a joint information center and practiced how we would respond and communicate. This one happened to be near Woodlawn, so I was very involved in that exercise. Rachel and I both volunteer for Junior Achievement. I think it's really important for us to be in front of 25 little eyes and ears looking at us and to get that experience of a little bit of what a teacher goes through. I do first grade at Quail Run, and Rachel did second grade at Cordley this year. Rachel attends the Social Media Club of Lawrence, both to gather ideas and to share her own, which is a great group. We're both part of the Kansas School PR Association, and I will be president this year. And Rachel and I will be involved in hosting their state conference here in Lawrence in the fall. And then as a member of the National School PR Group, we have resources and connections to school PR professionals across the nation. It's a great group. We thought we'd share some of the highlights. We have an editorial calendar that we use for planning, and this was just some of our first semester, what we were involved in. It was a busy year. I would point out that even though clouds blocked our good view of the eclipse, we spent an awful lot of energy and time communicating about safety with regard to viewing the eclipse, our NASA-approved glasses, what our plans were for the schools to do that, what our plans were for if your family wanted to do that outside of school. So we did have comprehensive communication around that, even though the clouds blocked most of our view that day. This was a big year for survey development and then encouraging people to participate in those surveys. And of course, the superintendent search was huge. So we had a lot of inviting people to focus groups, inviting people to complete surveys, inviting people to the meet and greets, and communicating around the new superintendent. You'll see Lawrence School Foundation events on here because we do partner with the foundation. People may not know they have the major fundraising events that involve the school district, so we feel like that is a school district event. I help write scripts. We help, especially with the fall breakfast, get the students that we recognize during that event. I write the script for the MC for the Follies. People may not know that, so we do partner with them quite a bit too. And then spring semester, we were heavily involved in communicating about school safety and security, including the 3 national walkouts and how the district would be managing those. And then after the superintendent selection, it was wonderful to have Dr. Lewis here as much as he was. This is something new that I haven't necessarily seen before in my tenure here. Either Rachel or I took him to every bricks and mortar campus before the school year ended. He didn't get in every single school, but he was on every campus in our district. He has been the guest speaker at 2 major public events and has been interviewed for 1 high school newspaper and then the Douglas County Newcomers Guide magazine. And then we have lots of things planned for him this summer, and then are looking at a comprehensive plan for introducing him to the community and sharing his entry plan, which I'm sure he will share with you. We don't want to steal that thunder. And then these are year-round things, obviously, board goals and district priorities that we communicate year-round. One of the things I've emphasized with Rachel is tying board goals and district priorities to what's happening in the classroom. So you'll see when she visits with you about what she's been busy doing that that is her focus, and she does a great job with that. Here are a few more highlights. Obviously, you had 2 community conversations this year, which was one of your promises, that you would reach out and listen to what patrons had to say, and we worked with you to get people there. And those were both very well attended. I consider it a success of ours that we had in September and October the superintendent search surveys. We had 1,100 staff and parents and patrons complete those, and then we turned right around the next month, November or December, and we had 1,500 complete the Patron Insight online surveys, apart from the scientific survey that they did of the 400 community members. So getting people to do surveys is a challenge, so I consider that a success of ours. Hiring Rachel is a huge highlight. We had 60 applicants for that position. I read every single one, including 3 online references for every single applicant. I interviewed 12 by phone. We had a team that invited 7 in for interviews, and then we gave a work experience challenge to the top 2, and Rachel survived all of that as the best candidate, and she's been awesome to work with. Are you going to talk a little bit about your background, or should I do that?
You can do that.
Okay. She's a strategic communications grad from KU, and she's from Leavenworth, so she's very familiar with the Lawrence Public Schools. She is, again, focused on getting out, talking to teachers and students about what they're doing in the classroom and how that relates to our board goals. She is awesome with photography and video production, so that has been a focus for her. And I think the next slide, yes, is showing you a video she's created highlighting the school year.
And I plan to attend the University of Kansas to pursue a major degree in mechanical engineering.
Kindergarten, you can play with kids and play nice.
The Lawrence Secondary School Horizon Award to Miss Bernice Weiser.
This year's winner is Miss Leah Henry.
Rachel talk a little bit more about what she's been up to.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. I just wanted to echo what Julie said. I'm really excited to be in this position. Public education is a passion of mine, so this opportunity was very hard to pass up, and I'm glad I took it and to be here with you all. In the 4 months that I've been here so far, the two things that I've paid the most attention to are how schools and how teachers are implementing our board goals and communicating that to the community. So that can be how parents and principals are introducing a self-funded book fair into the school, or how a lesson about equity is being taught in all grade levels, and that's mostly what I've focused on. I've been able to visit all of our schools and feature them in some way, and that was either through a video or through a picture or an article that I wrote for our quarterly newsletters. The other thing that I've been focusing on is our social media, specifically Twitter and Instagram. So I've introduced Twitter for our social media platforms, and I've been running that, and then creating our plan going forward with Twitter, and then to launch Instagram in August. And this is another video we have showing you what I mean by showing our board goals being implemented.
My name is Shannon Berquist. I have a first grader here at New York Elementary. New York's a Title I school, and my family falls right outside of the limit for being approved for reduced lunches. It was not within our budget to purchase the books that Scholastic offered, and so it occurred to me that if we couldn't afford to purchase these books, then there were a lot of families at our school who really, really couldn't afford to purchase these books. And it also really made me sad because, you know, it's like having to tell your kid no about something like a book. You know, it's not in the budget this month. It's depressing.
Shannon Berquist came to me probably about a year ago, shortly after our spring book fair, and said she wanted to provide us with a way that all kids could get a book.
So I thought, well, we're close to downtown, and if you look at the boundary of our school, pretty much all of downtown falls within our school's boundaries. So I thought, I'll go ask downtown for money, and I'll say, hey, this is your neighborhood school.
So Shannon proposed that we do a self-funded book fair, and she was more than willing to go out and raise the funds to do this. I wrote a letter in support, and she went to businesses all across Lawrence to get donations. We ended up with over $2,000 in our fund for this book fair.
I don't think she really thought I was going to be able to fundraise as much as I did.
We had our first self-funded book fair in November of this year during parent-teacher conferences. We had about the same profit that we would have had if we'd had a Scholastic book fair. It was just so fun to see kids come in with their handful of quarters knowing they could actually buy a book, and they weren't being disappointed to see the book cost $15, which they knew they didn't have. It's important to me that our students at New York have the opportunity to buy a book. I remember purchasing my first book, Black Stallion Mystery. I love bookstores, and I think the joy of reading, the joy of owning books, the joy of buying a book, you know, that's something that you just can't get through a library. So I want kids to have that experience and know that they can purchase a book, own that book, love that book, read that book over and over again. And with a self-funded book fair, we're able to do that.
The book fair should be about empowering kids to read and about early intervention and getting kids excited about reading. And that was really part of the goal. Was I wanted kids to be able to come to school with some money and purchase their own book. And I didn't have anyone that went away without a book. And I'm hoping that, you know, that it could go to other schools.
So the other part that I was talking about earlier is social media, and I've been taking a look as I've been here at our analytics, and this is just a snapshot of what we have going on right now. The top and the bottom are a look at our Twitter right now and our Facebook right now. Something that I want to note is that as we've been increasing in followers in both Facebook and Twitter, our engagement and our impressions have been increasing as well, which is good because sometimes you don't see that. It means that people are coming to our page and staying and actually digesting the information, which is a positive affirmation for Julie and I in using and justifying social media as a channel to share information. The other thing that I wanted to note here is in that bottom left-hand corner with all the little people, that's our Twitter followers and our Facebook followers, and the ones that identify as female and the ones that identify as male. Something that is interesting about Twitter is we're actually reaching more males than we are on Facebook. That's important for us and how we craft our messages per platform, because obviously males are important stakeholders in our public school district, and it's an audience that we're reaching more of in Twitter, which is good for us. The other thing that I want to highlight here is the most engaging subjects, and that's in those boxes that are on the lower right-hand corner there. School safety is #1 on Facebook and Twitter. It's something that are in the forefront of people's minds. But something else that I wanted to note specifically on Twitter is special observances. So this is Teacher Appreciation Week, or we participated in a tweet storm advocating for public education. Those types of observances have really been garnering people's attention, and it's something that Julie and I are looking to further as we continue, especially on Twitter. I'll turn back to Julie.
I'm going to brag on her. That was her first video that she did, and it's beautifully shot. The music is beautiful, and the first time I saw it, it made me cry. And if you can do stories that evoke people's emotions, they are going to watch, and they are going to follow you, and they are going to remember that. And we had a lot of people ask about the self-funded book fair, and I think Shannon's dream in the video will come to reality. Other schools will start doing that and making sure that all kids go away with a book from a book fair. Switching gears to who needs to know, communications planning. This is just a high-level overview of how we think about communications planning. Obviously, this is a graphic Jose used and we use to kind of identify, illustrate our mission that Lawrence Public Schools engages our school families and our community partners in our excellence, equity, and engagement goals, strengthening that student-centered support system that Jose and Kevin just talked about, and personalizing our learning so that all students achieve, succeed, and graduate future ready. So first we ask the question, who needs to know? To identify our target audiences involved. They may be internal audiences like students and staff. They may be external audiences like our university partners or our business partners, perhaps. Then we ask, well, what's the best way to reach them? And thankfully, in our district, we have a lot of structures in place for face-to-face communication. And face-to-face communication is the most effective form of communication. And when some staff may think they're in meetings all of the time, they are communicating and information sharing, and that time is well spent. We meet frequently at all levels. Obviously, the board does, our administrative team, teachers and staff. Our student groups meet with teachers and staff. We have parent organizations that are meeting. We have community advisory groups that are meeting, and all of those meetings are communication vehicles for sharing information. We also have a lot of communication tools growing all the time. Twitter was added by Rachel this year. We no longer, I remember relying on media to tell people things. That was our only way to get the message out, and that's just not the case anymore. They're a very important partner, but we have a lot of tools at our disposal to communicate ourselves. I wanted to share with our school messenger automated notification system this year. We have sent 364,027 phone calls, not all from me, and 317,181 emails. That includes our daily attendance calls, our daily tardy calls, lunch account balance, general outreach from the schools letting parents know about events, emergency communications, and then those 4 snow days. So that's a lot of calls and emails. Our YouTube channel has had 28,468 views this year. We have posted 82 videos during the past 10 months, and that picked up considerably with Rachel on board. Rachel's cranking out the videos. And that also includes your school board meeting archives, which are very well watched. You would be surprised. I wanted to switch a little bit to crisis communication. I know you are very interested in that, and this is just a great graphic about thinking about what you can do in times of peace, what we can be doing now to let people know about what's already in place and what we're doing, like the report that you just heard, to prevent safety issues from happening. Then what you do immediately during an emergency, throughout the crisis, and then afterwards to think about, well, what did we do right? What could we fix? What could we do better? People are always wanting to know everything as fast as you can get it, and it gets even faster with social media. So it's always a challenge to think about, yes, getting information out fast, but making sure that it's accurate and making sure we're not sharing information that either hampers a police investigation or violates privacy rights for our students or staff. So there are a lot of things to think about when you're trying to get the message out quickly. This is our current crisis support communication path that we use. And what is most used is in the gray boxes on the right-hand side. So you have your principal or the principal's designee, and they have an emergency, and they're calling 911, or they're working with their school resource officers, or calling LPD non-emergency phone number if it's not something that is critical, time sensitive. They only need to call one number then to get a hold of somebody at the district to support them in this emergency. They do not have to call around and try to find where Dr. Stubblefield is. They don't have to call around and try to find me. We have a hotline that our administrators take turns carrying 24/7. They sign up for a week or 2 at a time. Throughout the school year, 24/7, they are available to provide support to our schools. And it may be that they pass off information to, let's say there's a gas leak and it's during lunchtime and the school needs lunches. So that administrator in charge will contact Nutrition and Wellness, and Paula will get sack lunches out to the staff and the students. The principal doesn't have to manage all of that. The principal has enough on his or her plate with managing what's going on in their school. Then the administrator in charge is also responsible for notifying me. And you'll see the light blue arrows are backup plans. If for some reason I'm not at work, I tell the AIC I'm not going to be here last Friday. My son got married this weekend. I checked out for a day. The administrator in charge then takes over my role in notifying the superintendent or her designee, the Board of Education, and then evaluating whether it's something that needs to go further, additional school administrators, additional staff, families, media. So we have those built-in backup plans. Jose did not talk too much about it, but we do have a crisis support team, and those are our school volunteers that are on call to assist schools as needed. The only mandatory requirement for notifying the crisis support team is in the event of a student or staff death. Otherwise, it is optional support for the school. The principal can call the crisis support team. The AIC may listen to the principal and say, you know, this is something that we should probably get the crisis support team involved. Or it may get to me, and I'm going to call Jose, or I'll call Kevin and just say, this is happening. I just want you to know in case it turns into something that you may want to get the crisis support team on board. And they are your nurses, your psychologists, your social workers, your counselors, your folks in the mental health teams already in schools that are volunteering to go to another school and lend that support to them as needed. I think I get everything here. Yeah. Message development then. This is a highly simplified version again, but I wanted to point out empathy. People call the messaging system robocalls, but it's not a robot that's making those calls. It's our principals and myself. And we are parents, and we have emotions about those events that are going on, fears and anxieties, and we try to express understanding when we're communicating about them so we don't sound like a robot when we're making those calls. I also wanted to call your attention to the third step. What don't we know? Because like I said, everybody wants all the information and they want it right now, and there's a lot of times when we don't know yet. We're still resolving an investigation. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. So we have to be honest, and we have to say, we don't know, we're going to find out, and as soon as we find out, we're going to let you know. And promise those updates and then keep our promise. Next year. We already have a lot on our plate for next year, and I just added one sitting back there because you're talking about communication needs for letting people know what kind of mental health supports we have in our schools, so I added that to our plan. So we will be working with Dr. Lewis and the executive leadership team, also the district and board advisory committees to develop a communications plan for next year. And these are some of the things we know must be on it: the superintendent's entry plan, your strategic planning process. Our district transition to Power School will be huge. One of the things that we're looking at in Power School is it partners with School Messenger, and parents will be able to set preferences for how they want to be contacted about various things. And we can also follow through on the opt-in process, which is required by law, to be able to text. So we're looking into starting texting in the fall. Dr. Stubblefield has brought up that we need to look at, can we communicate with students directly? We haven't done that. Can we collect high school students' cell phone information in case they're at open lunch? And we need to tell them, don't come back to the building, something's going on. Or maybe they're at College and Career Center, and we need to tell them, don't come back to the school right now or something. So that's something we'll be looking into with Power School Transition too. Obviously, KISA and the curriculum planning process, all of the normal board goals and learning objectives that we normally communicate about, bond progress, school safety training and security improvements, because we have a lot of plans in that area, and that's something that, as Rachel mentioned, people are very interested in. The new fundraising policy you just approved tonight, people will need to know about that, so we're going to have to start communicating more about that. The discussion of the high school start times proposal, we're getting ready to have an advisory council about that and some focus groups. Board action related to the budget and what the Supreme Court decision means for parents and students. And still talking, of course, about celebrations, and the rededication of the Billy Mills Middle School will be a big one. That's the 50th anniversary of that school, so there'll be a lot of things planned for that. And then I'm going to have Rachel talk about her plans for next year with social media.
So I think the biggest one would probably be our launch of Instagram. This is kind of a comprehensive plan of where we are and where we're going. Right now we're in that awareness stage. We're still trying to build awareness that we have these social media accounts, that we're bringing them. And then some other more nuanced parts of social media, like our unified hashtag, and getting those impressions up in our posts. Then we're going to start working on that engagement piece, so introducing things like social media Q&As or educational polls that relate back to our editorial calendar. Those things are going to start being in place once we have that established foundation. That engagement piece is really critical for creating our advocates, because the thing about social media, and I'm sure you know as social media users, is we can say all we want, but until we have other people relaying the same thing, that doesn't hit home until those people, those advocates, are on social media with us saying the same thing. So creating opportunities for user-generated content to almost back up what we're saying and increase the amount of influence we have online. And that's where we're going with social media, which will be exciting. Instagram in particular is going to be a business page, and so this will allow us to get analytics on our Instagram as well, which will be great for us. So we have real-time feedback. Our goal is to make it a blog-style feed, similar to what KU is doing right now. They will post something and then kind of tell a story behind it. We want to attract more students and use Instagram as our social media platform that talks more to that student, that younger population. And we've been working with Free State's video team to create a promotional video introducing our Instagram in August. And then another thing that I'm really excited for is utilizing those Instagram stories. We'll be able to, if we have a certain topic that we want to educate about, or we have a story that we want to tell, it'll be another way to create long-form visual content that is easily digestible for users. And that's going to be a critical piece in our Instagram plan going forward. And that's what social media will look like.
This is the communication planning process we will use. We do have a lot of research already from the surveys that we've been doing and from the analytics that Rachel has been talking about. So we look at what do we already know, what don't we know, what do we need to find out, and then we start making those plans. You implement by communicating, and then you evaluate how did we do, who didn't we reach, what do we need to do differently next time. And some of the key insights from the research, the 4 lowest marks from this year are similar to past surveys, and they are written there at the top of the slide. And then the lowest score related to educational equity is the discipline issue being applied fairly. So these are things that we need to think about when we're communication planning on how we can share the improvements that we're making and the strategies that the district is using to improve in these areas. I did want to note the district score on communicating plans in progress increased by 0.14 from 2016 and to this year's scientific telephone survey that Patron Insight did. That's on a 5-point weighted scale, so a 3.8 would be a B, so we're slightly under. And 66% of respondents gave this measure a grade of B or better. I am not a fan of Bs, so we will be working on improving that in future surveys. We've done surveys anytime we've had a bond issue coming up, so we do have several years of data. Sometimes we've changed the questions, so we haven't always asked the same thing, but in this particular slide, you can see we have 3 years of data on those lowest performing marks. Some other key research insights are, where do people get their school news? If we're focusing only on Twitter and nobody's following Twitter, then we are wasting our time. And friends and neighbors always hits the highest point. Just like with kids, it's their peers. And teachers and staff are always in the top 8. And I think of teachers and staff as friends and neighbors too. All of us are friends and neighbors too. So my philosophy has always been to focus first on internal communication, making sure our 2,000 employees know what you're doing, what the district is doing, where we're going, why we're doing this, so they can help spread that information and that message. Notice the school board last year made the top 6 there, and communication is everybody's job. And even our newsletter continues to be mentioned. I don't hear a lot about the newsletter. It's an important partnership that we have with the Journal World, except for my mom, of course. She always reads everything. And I have to tell her, well, Rachel wrote that. She goes, oh, I really like, oh, Rachel wrote that. At least this year. And the Journal World continues to be a top place that people turn to for their school information. And we need to continue to nurture that partnership and appreciate Elvin being here and passing on what we're working on at school board meetings. So those are some of the ways people find out about school news. Do you have questions for Rachel? No.
Questions?
Do you have questions for us?
I have one.
Chair.
It's more of a broad one, and It's going to sound like a loaded question, and I'm looking for a specific piece of information, but I'm really not. It's more of a general question. So what would you say is the single hardest thing that you deal with, and do you think that there's anything that we as a board could help you overcome that?
Excellent question, DR. I'll let Rachel think about it and answer for herself. I would say communication between departments. No matter how many meetings we have and no matter how we try to get together and find out what each other's doing, there are always surprises, and someone will always say, well, that didn't go very well, and I won't even know about it. I feel like I could have helped if I'd only known what you were doing. So the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing sometimes. So I would say internal communication between departments and making sure that we're all on the same page and we're able to support what's going on in other departments. I would say that was a challenge that continues to frustrate me.
Okay.
What's yours?
I would honestly say the same thing.
Of course she would.
Well, for me, getting into the schools is such a pivotal part of what I do, and that's also been the biggest obstacle that I've had to face so far, because there will be a lot of things going on that we find out about later, like Julie just said, that could have been such amazing, engaging content or could have been amplified, but we don't know about it until after it happens, until it's too late. And so I think that piece has been a struggle.
I will add to that our schools are very good about sharing information about events and like fundraisers, parent nights, but they are not as good as sharing information about what they're doing in the classroom and how that relates to the board goals. That's why I wanted Rachel to focus on that. And everything Rachel is doing is value added to the district. I did not look at the list of things I was doing and say, I don't really like doing these things. This is what Rachel's going to do. Rachel is doing things that I have not been able to do. I haven't had the time. She has Twitter expertise that I do not have. So everything that she's doing is value added. But helping the schools think more about sharing those student learning engagement stories in addition to their events and celebrations and fundraisers.
Thank you.
Is a challenge.
Other questions for Julie and Rachel? Really appreciate very thorough update on everything that's going on in your department, and appreciate the things that you've added, especially since Rachel has come on board. I'm a Twitter user, and I really, really appreciate. I know you knew that.
We appreciate you.
I really appreciate the increased presence, because I think that's a way for those of us who do engage in that platform to share widely what's going on here, which is really important. I appreciate that we've started doing press releases about our board meetings. That's been a very positive add of new things that we're doing this year. There's a lot of really positive developments in the plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you for all your work. Kelly?
Congratulations about your son being married. And
oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I would also say that Rachel is working with staff on Twitter and convincing them, I guess I would say,
well, I hope so.
that social media is their friend, and that it's not so scary, and that it can be used to share about what they're doing in their classrooms and personalized learning and tech integration and learning forward, future ready, all those things that we talk about all the time, equity. She went to an LVS staff development. She told me about it, but I just kind of forgot about that she was going there. And then I went to a retirement party at the virtual school, and I had all these teachers coming up to me saying, oh, Rachel, she's fantastic, and I'm going to start doing this in Twitter, and she said this, and we need to have her come back. And it was just overwhelming to me that she just took that on and went out and spoke to a huge group of staff about using Twitter to share what they're doing with students at the virtual school. So I know she's interested in doing that with more staff. And in terms of what the school board can do, like I mentioned with Shannon, we see you sharing our information and on social media, and I know that helps, and appreciate that.
incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Really
And
appreciate that you're-
congratulations to you, Julie, also for your upcoming leadership opportunity with our, it's
Kansas School
yes,
Public Relations.
thank you. I knew I was going to butcher the name, so I wasn't even going to try. Because I think that is also an important way to share what we're doing in Lawrence Public Schools. And I actually I've met people from across the state who know you through that venue. And so I know that Julie's making an impact in leadership in that area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
And with that, we are concluded for this evening. So motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.